Hi guys, in this video we're going to have a look at the area of a circle. So if you're after the circumference, check out my other video, because this one we're going to concentrate solely on area. Now hopefully you're already aware that the formula to work out the area of a circle is pi r squared, where r is the radius. So we take the radius, we square it, and we times it by pi. Now, people always get confused with this formula and the circumference, but the way I always remember this is the area one is purely because it's r squared. And when you're dealing with area, the units will always be centimetres squared or metres squared or millimetres squared or something like that. Essentially, the units are always squared when dealing with area. So the way I remember it is this formula here, where it's pi r squared. That's the one that deals with the area of a circle. So we've got some basic ones here. Then we're going to have a look at going backwards and finding out different lengths. And then we've got halves and quarters and 3/4. And then we've got some compound shapes as well, all to do with circles. So if you want to skip ahead to some of the more trickier ones, by all means do. Or just watch the whole video and find out everything to do with area of circles. So let's get cracking. We'll start off nice and easy with this one here. So we have our circle. We have the radius. So all I'm going to do is stick it straight into the formula, where the area is pi times the radius. Well, the radius in this case is 6, so 6 squared. Simple as that. Now, if this is a non-calculator paper, they might say leave your answer in terms of pi. So, of course, 6 squared is 36. So pi times 36 is 36 pi. So it says leave it in terms of pi. That's all you would do. Of course, you would include your units centimetres squared. However, if it does want it to say 1 decimal place or something like that, we do need to get our calculators out. And your pi button might be slightly different. Here, for me, I have to press shift, and it's that middle button there, and you can see it's pi, and then just times by, and you can go straight in with the 6 squared. Of course, we'll see 36 pi. The calculator will put it in terms of pi if it's nice, but we want a decimal, so I press the SD button, and it tells me it's 113. I'm going to round it to 1 decimal place, so 0.9. That 9 will round that to a 1, so 113.1 centimetres squared. Okay, number 2 then, or example number 2. This time I've been given the diameter, which is absolutely fine, because to get the radius, all I've got to do is half the diameter, because the radius is here, so the diameter is 8, the radius is half of that, which in this case would mean 4 centimetres. Just put it into the formula. So the area equals pi times 4 squared, which is pi times 16, because 4 times 4 is 16. And again, in terms of pi, that would be just 16 pi units centimetres squared. Of course, again, if you wanted the actual decimal, we just get our calculators. Pi times 4 squared and 16 pi, obviously, SD button, and we see that is 50 point, again I'm going to round this to 1 decimal place, so the 6 would round that to up to a 3, so 50.3 centimetres squared. Of course, the questions in the exam might say round it to something different, just round it to whatever the question asks. Okie dokie, this one here then. This time we are told what the area is. We're told it's 49 pi, and we need to know what the radius is. So I'm just going to look at my formula here and go, okay, if I have the radius, I'm going to do a bit of flow chart. If I have the radius, I need to square it. I then times it by pi, and then that tells me what the area is. In this case, the area is 49 pi. So to find out what the radius is, I just go backwards. So 49 pi, and when we go backwards in the flowchart, remember we do the opposite. So divided by pi. Opposite of squaring a number is to square root a number. And let's type that in. So I have 49 pi, just press equals. Yep, I've got my 49 pi. I divide it by pi, press equals, I have 49, so I need to square root that answer. I'm just going to use my answer button to previously use that 49, but obviously you can just do square root of 49, absolutely fine. And we see that the radius in this case is 7. Always check your answers. So if you think the radius is 7, we do pi times 7 squared. Yes, we get 49 pi, it works. Always check. Easy marks in the exam because you know you're 100% correct. Okay, next one here then. So the area of a circle is 121 pi. Work out the diameter this time. So I'm going to come back to this one here. I had the diameter. So I started off with the diameter. What did I do? I had to half it, so I had to divide by 2. That got me my radius. Once I had my radius, I could then use my formula. So once I had my radius, I then squared it. I then timesed it by pi, and that gave me the area, and the area in this case is 121 pi. Okay, go backwards. 121 pi divided by pi. We square root it. Remember, always do the opposite. This time we times it by 2, and we get back to the diameter. So let's have a look. 121 pi, yeah. We divide by pi and press equals. 121. We need to square root the answer. It gives us 11. That's the radius. So we need to times it by 2 to get the diameter. So in this case, the diameter is 22, and then it was centimetres squared, so this time it is centimetres. And I just realised that this one doesn't have a unit, so that's fine. I can leave that as a 7. Okay, so there's some of the more easier ones. Let's have a go at some halves, quarters and 3/4. So let me just move my sheet over here. There we go. So what do we do in this case where we have half a circle? Well, it's quite simple. We still use our formula. We're going to imagine this circle is complete, so it's a whole circle, and we're going to work out the area. So I would do pi times, this is just a radius already, so that's fine, 13.5 squared. But that's going to work out the whole area of the circle. I just want half of it. So all I'm going to do is times that by a half. Now, of course, you could divide it by 2 or times it by 0.5. All of those are exactly the same thing. But the reason why I times it by a half is because when you look at working out areas of sectors, that's the sort of process you'll do where you have the angle divided by 360. So I quite like doing it like this, but again, you can just divide it by 2. It's not a problem. Okay, so let's put that into the calculator and see what we get. So 1/2, or you could use 0.5, times by pi, times by 13.5 squared, and that equals 286.2776, etc., etc. So to 1 decimal place, let's have a look. 7 would round that up, so 286.3 centimetres squared. Excellent. Exactly the same shape here, so I've still got a half a circle, but this time I've been given the diameter. Nothing to be worried about, just like before, just half it to get the radius. So half of 18 would give me 9 centimetres, and then it's exactly the same thing. Work out the whole area. So pi times 9 squared. I just want half of the area, so I just times it by a half, or again you can divide it by 2 and see what it comes up with. So a half times by pi times by 9 squared, press the SD button, comes up with 127.2345. Cool. And I'm going to round it to 1 decimal place, so 2 is the first decimal place, 3 tells me to round it down, so 127.2 centimetres squared is the area of that one. So you might already have guessed it. How do I work out the area of a quarter of a circle? Work out the whole circle. This time I do have the radius. So it's pi times 10 squared. That's going to give me the whole area. I just want a quarter, so just times it by a quarter. Of course, you could times it by 0.25 or divide this by 4. All of them will give you the right answer. Absolutely fine, because you just want a quarter of it. So a quarter times by pi times by 10 squared gives me 25 pi. and I want it as a decimal, so 78.5398, etc., etc. So to one decimal place, which is the 5, 3 tells you to round down, 78.5 centimetres squared. Okay, and the final one, you might already be ahead of me. Again, I have the radius, which is 15. So pi times 15 squared, that'll tell me the whole area. I just want 3/4. So I'm going to times it by 3/4. Of course, you could times that by 0.75, or you could divide this by 4 and then times by 3. I just quite like using the fraction because it just makes it a little bit easier. So times by pi, times by 15 squared, and SD gives me 530.1437, etc., etc. So one decimal place, 1 is the first decimal place, 4 tells me to round down, so 530.1 centimetres squared. Okay, so that's how you do halves, quarters and 3/4. So let's have a look now at going back to find missing lengths when you have those. Okie dokie. So this is my last page of 4 examples. So I'm told the area is 55.125 pi, and I want to work out the diameter. Right, so first thing to do is imagine you have the diameter. So I have the diameter. To use the formula, pi r squared, I need to have the radius. So the first thing I'm going to do with the diameter is I'm going to half it. That's going to give me the radius. Okay. Once I have the radius, I'm then going to work out the whole area. So I'm going to square the radius. I'm then going to times it by pi. Now that's going to give me the area of the whole circle, and I want half of it, so I'm going to times that by a half to give me half the area, and we know half the area is 55.125 pi. And then we just go backwards, so 55.125 pi, and I times by a half, so I'm going to divide by a half. Key point here, if you like to divide by 2 to find your area, so that would be divide by 2, that would obviously be times by 2. If you do it this way, that's what it will be, so just a heads up on that one. Divide by pi, opposite of squaring is square rooting, opposite of dividing by 2 is timesing by 2, so we get back to the diameter. So the diameter in this case will be 55.125 pi. And then we need to divide by 1/2, and then we need to divide by pi. We then need to square root that answer, and then we need to times it by 2, so the diameter would be 21. And there's no units there, but obviously that was centimetres, that would be centimetres. If that was meters, sorry, centimetres squared, that'd be centimetres. If that's metres squared, that would be metres. But we don't know the units, so we'll just leave it as 21. Of course, go back and check it, stick it back in, do you get the right answer? I'm not going to do that now because I'm running out of time, so you can definitely do that in the exam and check. Right, next one, exactly the same idea. This time I have the area of 3/4 of a circle is 108 pi, and I need to know what the radius is. This one's slightly easier because we're only after the radius. So if you like, you could actually write down the formula. You would go, okay, I've got 3/4 of a circle, and I would times that by pi, and I would times that by the radius squared, just like we did on the other sheet, and that would equal 108 pi. So you could also just write it out and then use the flow chart using that, or we could just do it like we did up here and just work through the process. Entirely up to you. Either way, we start off with the radius and we square it and we times it by pi. That works out the whole circle, and I'm going to times that by 3/4 to work out 3/4 of the area, and we're told that 3/4 of the area is 108 pi. And then we just go backwards. So 108 pi, divided by 3/4. Just realised I don't have my arrow there. Divided by pi, square root, and we get back to r. So in this case, the radius, let's have a look, 108 pi divided by 3/4 divided by pi, square root the answer, and we have 12. So the radius is 12. Okay, so that's how you find missing lengths when you have a half or semicircle or 3/4 of a circle. So now we're going to have a look at some compoundy shapes. So we need to split these shapes up. So the most obvious one to do with this is cut it along there. So I have a semicircle, and obviously these two little dashes here mean that this is a semicircle. And I'm told that the whole height of the whole shape is 6, which means that is going to be 3 centimeters, and that is also going to be 3 centimeters. In which case, I now have the radius, because this is a semicircle, that would be the center, and that bit there, it doesn't have to always be there, it's just a point from the center to the edge of the circumference. So this tells me that 3 is the radius of this semicircle. So I'm going to work out the area of the semicircle first. So there's my little semicircle, just to tell the examiner that's what I'm doing. And it'll be a half, because it's a semicircle, times by pi, times by 3 squared. So let's have a look. Oops. 1/2 times by pi times by 3 squared gives me 9/2 pi. And the triangle, so if I just draw another little dash here for the triangle, remember base times the height and half it. Well, if the radius is 3, that would be the diameter. So the diameter of the semicircle would be 6, which means that's also the base of the triangle. So that would actually just be base, which is 6 times by 3 and half it, which of course will give me, well, 6 times 3 is 18, half it you get 9. Now, if the answer was to say leave it in terms of pi, you would have it as 9/2 pi plus 9. You wouldn't do anything else, you would just literally add that on. The reason for that is that's 9/2 pi, and this doesn't have a pi, you can't actually add them. Okay, if that's got pi and this doesn't, you have to keep them separate. So if it says leave it in terms of pi, that's what you have to do. Of course, if it doesn't want it in terms of pi, we already have my 9/2 pi there. So I'm just going to add my 9, press equals, and then of course that would be 23.1 centimeters squared in rounding to 1 decimal place. So just a little heads up there of how you leave that in terms of pi. If that's in terms of pi, and that's just a number, you can't actually add the 9/2 and the 9, you just have to leave it like that. And finally, of course, the standard, work out the shaded area. So we have our rectangle around the outside. Always work out the total area first. So there's my little rectangle. Now if the diameter is 5 and that diameter is also going to be 5, that means the base of the rectangle will be 10. And if I just rotate that round, that would mean that the diameter of this is 5, so it will also be 5 that way, which means the height of the rectangle is going to be 5. So the area of the rectangle, 5 times 10, which of course is 50, and that's centimeters, so I should include my units there, centimeters squared. So work out the total first. Now we can work out the circles. Well, if the diameter is 5, that means that the radius will be half of that, which is 2.5 centimeters. So pi times 2.5 squared will give me the area of the circle, times 2.5 squared, which is 19.63, etc, etc, etc. But I have 2 circles, so I'm going to times that by 2, which gives me 39.269. And of course, to work out the shaded area, I just do the big area, which is 50, take away this area here. So take away the 39.269. Don't get rid of that because I'm going to use the whole number. And then that's going to equal, and this is how you can do it, just go 50, take away your previous answer. Of course you can type that in, but it's just easier to do it this way. So 50, take away the previous answer, and that leaves us with 10.73009, etc., etc. So to one decimal place, 10.7 centimeters squared, and that would be your answer. So hopefully that helps, guys. Lots of questions there. Thanks for watching.